Good morning. Today we're going to start reviewing by factoring. The first part we're going to do is we're going to do notes having to do with pulling out a GCF, factor by grouping, and factor by difference of squares. This assignment will be due Wednesday, April 22nd, 11:30 p.m. This will be done by Sophia. This is a different one than my HRW. Okay, let's start with the first four problems. The first four problems we're going to factor, okay, greatest common factor. All right, now to do that, we need to factor the greatest common factor of 10 and 14. The greatest common factor of 10 and 14 is a 2. The greatest common factor of N10 and N6 is N6. We have to take the smallest exponent. After the smallest exponent, we divide in our numbers, we subtract the exponents. 2 goes into 14, 7, and 10 minus N6 is N4. 2 goes into 10, 5, and 6 minus N6 cancel each other out. Because 6 minus 6 is 0, and we know any number to the 0 power is 1. Next, we need to find the greatest common factor of 72, 24, and 16. If we forgot how to do that, okay, we can do the good old upside down birthday cake of 72, 24, and 16. Okay, a number that goes into both, we try to find the biggest number. Well, the biggest number is 8. If you did not know that, well, you try it. If you don't come up with the biggest number, then you keep on going and you keep on making layers. 8 goes into 72, 9. 8 goes into 24, 3. 8 goes into 16, 2. There's nothing that goes into 9, 3, and 2, so I know my greatest common factor is an 8. Okay? I have nothing, I have N1 and N3. Remember, to take out the greatest common factor, it has to be in all 3 parts. We divide in our numbers, we subtract our exponents. 8 goes into 72, 9. 8 goes into negative 24n, negative 3n. 8 goes into 16n3, 2 and 3. Now, I've done the first 2 problems. If you notice in problem number 1, we have 2 terms. We have 2 terms in the parentheses. Problem number 2, we have 3 terms. We have 3 terms in the parentheses. Make sure you have the same amount of terms in the problem and you have that same amount of terms in the parentheses. Problem 3. Greatest common factor of 3, 21, and 30 is 3. Greatest common factor of x6, x4, x5. Smallest exponent, x4. Greatest common factor of y3, y1, y2, y1. Divide in your number, subtract the exponents. 3 goes into 3, 1. x6 minus x4, x2. y3 minus y1, y2. 3 goes into negative 21, negative 7. x4 minus x4, cancel. y1 minus y1, cancels. 3 goes into 30, 10. x5 minus x4, x1. y2 minus y1, y1. Okay, you can also check yourself by distributing it back. You have a 3, x4, x2, x6, y1, y2, y3. 3 times negative 7, negative 21, x4, y1. 3 times 10 is 30, x4, x1, x5, y1, y2, y1, y1, y2. Okay, and the last problem. Greatest common factor of 28, 21, and 28 is 7. x6, 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 x6. y2, y1, and no y is no y. Remember, the variable has to be in all 3 parts. Dividing your numbers, subtract the exponents. 7 goes into 28, 4, x6 minus x6 cancel, and we're left with y2. 7 goes into 21, 3. x6 minus x6 cancels, and you're left with y. 7 goes into negative 28, negative 4. x6 minus x6 cancels. And there you have your greatest common factors. Okay, the next type we're going to do is we're going to do factor by grouping. Factor by grouping. When you do factor by grouping, we need 4 terms. That's the key to factor by grouping, 4 terms. Okay? So here, we're going to find the greatest common factor of the first 2. And by the way, you have in Canvas, right under these problems, you have the completed notes that you can refer to. Step 1, greatest common factor of the first 2, which would be a 5, a 2. Divide in your numbers, subtract your exponents. 5 goes into 10, 2, a3 minus a2, a1. Step 1, second part, greatest common factor of this, 5 goes into 25, 5, a2 minus a2 cancel. Next part, greatest common factor of the second 2 is 4. Divide in your numbers, subtract your exponents. 4 into 8a goes 2a, 4 into 20 goes 5. Sorry about that. Step 3, take what is outside. What is outside is the 5a and the 4. Put that as your first binomial. So we put that as 5a squared plus 4. The last step is take what is inside, make sure it's the same, which it is. If it's not, you messed up on your math. And put that as your second binomial. And that is grouping. Next. First step. Greatest common factor of the first 2. 8 and 24, 8. V3, V2, V2. Divide on your numbers, subtract your exponents. I'm left with V minus 3. Okay, second part. Take the greatest common factor of the next 2. Now, if you notice, when you have a problem where the last 2 terms are negative or the middle 2 terms are negative, you have to pull out a negative, because remember, you want this to look like, you want your second parenthesis to look like a V minus 3. Well, it clearly doesn't. So you have to pull out a negative 1. Now, negative divided by negative is a positive. Positive 3 divided by negative 1 is a negative 3. Okay? Step 2, take what is outside. What is outside? 8b squared minus 1. Put that as your first binomial. 8b squared minus 1. Last step, take what is inside, make sure it's the same. Put it as your second binomial. Now you can check yourself by foiling back. Foiling it back, 8b squared times v is 8b to the third. Our outsides are negative 24v2. Our insides is negative 1v. And our last is a positive 3. That's how you can check yourself. Okay? Next. Greatest common factor of the first 2. Okay, there's no greatest common factor of 7 and 6. But there is a greatest common factor of a3 and a2, and it's a2. Divide in your numbers, 7a minus 6. Greatest common factor of the second 2 is 5. And you're left with 7a minus 6. Take what is outside, put it as your first binomial. A squared plus 5. Take what is inside, make sure it's the same. 7a minus 6. And there you go. And the last problem. Greatest common factor of the first 2 is 8. And then m and m is m. N and nothing is nothing. Divide in your numbers, subtract your exponents. We're left with 4n minus 1. Greatest common factor of the second two is a 7 and an n2. And you're left with 4n minus 1. Take what is outside, 8m plus 7n squared. Take what is inside, make sure it's the same, 4n minus 1. And there we have grouping. Again, grouping must have 4 terms. Okay, the last 4 problems have to do with difference of squares. With difference of squares, here's the key for difference of squares. Okay, you need to have 2 terms. 2 terms. All right, you need 3 things. You need 2 terms. You need a subtraction sign. You need to take the square root of each, 1 plus, 1 minus. Okay, so p squared minus 9, that's a difference of squares. I have a subtraction sign. Both are perfect squares. And there's 2 terms. So we take the square root of each, p and a p, square root of 9, 3 and 3, 1 plus, 1 minus. It does not matter the order. You can do minus plus or plus minus. Next, I have 2 terms. They're both perfect squares, but notice, that's a plus sign. That is a plus sign. That is not a difference. So if it's not a difference, what do we write? We write the word prime, or not factorable. You can say either one. Okay? Next, 2 terms, 64p squared, 81q4, they're both perfect squares. And there's a subtraction sign. Take the square root of each, 1 plus, 1 minus. That's 8p. That's 8p. 81q4 is 9q2. 9q2, 1 plus, 1 minus. And last, here I have 2 terms. I have a subtraction sign, but I do not have perfect squares. So if I don't have perfect squares, I have to think of a greatest common factor. What is the greatest common factor here? It is a 5. So now I'm left with m squared. 5 into 125 goes 25. Now here we have a difference of squares. I bring down my 5, and now m minus 5 and m plus 5. And that is my answer. Okay, so now you have 20 problems to do on Sophia, which is due Wednesday night.